it doesn't sound nice to say, but I know none of you listening are going to disagree with me. Not everyone's worth it. And I'm not saying they personally are not worth it. They're not a worth it person. I'm saying their business. Not everyone's business is worth you sacrificing whatever you have to sacrifice to get.
Not every prospect is a client. Everybody's money is green, but not everybody's money is worth it. Not everybody is worth doing what it's going to take in order to earn that money.
Tis the season for turning people away.
Tis the season for turning people away. This season comes around much more frequently than I would like. I feel like there's at least 4 times of year where most of the leads that are coming in, we just can't do anything with it.
Yeah.
Or won't do anything with it.
Yeah. And basically it's kind of like,
it's at least quarterly.
Anytime the phone rings, you may as well just ignore it because it's not going to be good. Every once in a while. I don't even know what our success rate is with people who actually call, but our experience is that generally speaking, if someone's calling, it's like, I cannot get off the phone fast enough. The other day I picked up the phone and someone said, yeah, hi, I'm curious if you do any altercations.
Altercations.
No. Turning people away is part of the game, and it should be part of yours. That's one thing that I know is, it's really not that light bulb of a concept, but I also know business owners who don't turn people away, which is also it's crazier to not turn people away.
I know that we have turned more people away than we actually have worked with.
Yes.
Certainly over the last 5 or 6 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, most people who reach out are not ready.
And I still always hate it.
It never feels good.
I hate turning people away because that means that there are dollars that exist that I'm not getting.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is you have to, as a business owner, think deeper about those dollars and think, what is it going to require of me? And what does that say about my business?
Yeah, when you start thinking about the true cost of taking this on, it's not just about materials and labor. It's about the mental load and the priorities that you have as a business and whether or not this is aligned with them.
And what this means is I'm going to have to bring my business back down to the way that I was operating it a decade ago in order to earn this money. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
But I still hate it. I hate turning people away or telling people, no, sorry, we're not able to do anything with this, or no, sorry, that budget just isn't even close to what we need for whatever it is that you want. And I hate it, but we do it all the time because we have to, because we take our business seriously.
One thing that just personally is really hard when you run a business like we run is because you do, like we said, you end up turning more away than taking on for one reason or another. The thing that's really hard is when you get a lead that comes in, whether it's on the phone or through email, and they're very clear about their budget. And it's very clear to me that they've now been to my website because we have our prices very clearly listed for a reason. But when they come in and they say, I have this to spend, like, what can we do? Then we're in this really awkward position where we either have to completely ignore them,
which is so far off,
which doesn't feel good, or we have to tell them like that's not enough. But what's really hard is when they're rude then about it.
Right.
That's really hard. And that actually happens more than you'd think. And it's just like really insulting, I think. And it's really, really disrespectful because I don't know, I'm put in this really weird position where you're coming to me with something that is super far off base, that I've done everything in my control to prevent you for this. And it's not even, it's not like you should be embarrassed, but they feel embarrassed, which is why they respond poorly. But I just find it so off-putting when someone has that response, when I'm doing you a courtesy by responding, even though you don't deserve a response. it's hard when you know that the response you're giving is not at all what they want to hear. It just, it just doesn't feel good. And it really doesn't feel good when they're rude to you about it.
Yeah, but it's cost of doing business.
We used to, back in the day, by the way, say, I want to work with everyone. I want to work with everyone who wants to work with me. Remember those days?
I do remember those days.
And we did a lot of times. There were, even way back in the day, though, it didn't take long before we decided that we wanted to have an order minimum.
Yeah, we need to set some parameters here.
Which back then was more than one shirt. Because we would get a lot of inquiries for people who wanted a shirt. We still get a lot of inquiries for people who want to buy one shirt, which I'll never understand.
That's a Robert, California. How is that worth your time?
How is that worth
That's
your
not
time?
worth your time.
But even way back then, we were at the point where we were saying, I don't feel like this is the true cost of working with someone for one shirt is really worth it. And correct. But we were not very strict with the order minimums or the types of leads or the timelines or the budgets, the types of things we used to just bend over backwards to try to accomplish and complete for people. Looking back, it's like crazy to think about. But then we learned this lesson, which it doesn't sound nice to say, but I know none of you listening are going to disagree with me. Not everyone's worth it. And I'm not saying they personally are not worth it. They're not a worth it person. I'm saying their business. Not everyone's business is worth you sacrificing whatever you have to sacrifice to get.
Not every prospect is a client. Everybody's money is green, but not everybody's money is worth it. Not everybody is worth doing what it's going to take in order to earn that money. That's another way of looking at it.
And I think the clearer you are on your goals, your business priorities, the easier it becomes to distinguish, what is a yes and what is a no. But I do know that it can sometimes be harder to identify what's an easy yes or what's an easy no. And one way that we've established is if we're getting a weird feeling or we're really having to wonder or we're having to really discuss if this is worth taking on, it's a no. That's really simple. And then there are some things that come through and it's really easy to just say, no.
No, that's not what we do.
And there are also things that come in and it's really easy to say, oh yeah, let's do it. Let's make it happen. But really what the lens that this should be seen through is through your own goals and your priorities. And I can't tell you what those are. We can tell you what ours are. And at this point, you've been listening to Appointment Only for quite a number of episodes. Generally speaking, what our goals and our priorities are. So it does become clear, but there are always going to be opportunities for you to wonder, is this worth it or is this not worth it? So we want to talk about turning people away, how to do it, maybe some examples of sometimes that it's worked well and sometimes that it hasn't worked well. We'll talk to you about some ways that it works and some ways that it doesn't work. And ultimately what it boils down to is there's really only so much you can prevent. This is one lesson we've learned, and I wish we didn't have to learn it. I wish it wasn't true. But there's really only so much you can do. When you're working with people, it's tough. And sometimes your communication isn't going to sync. Sometimes it doesn't matter how pure your intentions are. What you're communicating is not going to land. We cannot be responsible for how someone is going to receive what we're saying.
That's something that is a really tough hurdle to clear as a business owner who loves what you do, who got into your business for a reason, who loves people. As a business owner who is so passionate about the business that you run, it is so hard, at least for us, it is so hard to compartmentalize and to remove yourself from the way in which what you say will be received. We often still do drive ourselves crazy talking through scenarios of, oh, well, if they read it this way and what if they read it that way?
And I have to say, just sorry to interject here, but I have to say this. Our communication is absolutely banging.
Oh, it's on point.
Our communication is better than any business I've ever worked with. the clear communication of expectations and timelines, the way we craft our email responses, the template emails that just get auto-generated and sent on different types of leads. I've never seen emails come to me that are better than the emails we send. And we're constantly tweaking them. And they are so intentional in the things they communicate. That's one thing that we take a lot of pride in is our communication, not only in the speed and the promptness and the priority that we put on it, but also just the languages. You'd never know
multiple languages.
You'd never
we
know that
speak.
we're good communicators based on the way I'm explaining this. But we're very strong communicators. We always got, straight A's in our communication classes. And that's one of our great skills. So the communication that our business has, it's super clear, it's super direct, it's super intentional. And I've yet to work with a company that can out-communicate our emails.
But it is hard as a business
Yes.
owner who you're so passionate about what it is that you do. It's hard to remove yourself from the response. You have to, though. It is your job to communicate clearly, to communicate what your expectations are. Now, here's an easy way. If you're looking for a way to help you compartmentalize or help you feel good about the way that you delivering bad news, as it may feel, will be received, is the only times our communication is ever received incorrectly or is ever received and the person is offended by what we said is if they're not right for our business, in which
Exactly.
case the communication just did its job. If you want to respond and be mad or be offended by the fact that we require something or charge what we charge and you're mad about that, we were never going to work well together anyway. It wouldn't have been helpful to connect in person and have a meeting and try to sell you on something or try to take you through any type of a process because you're not ready for that.
Mm-hmm.
You're not looking for my business, you're looking for a different business, and that's fine. We aren't for everybody. No business is. And it's a mistake for business owners to think, well, I want to be for everyone though. You don't and you can't be. It's impossible. Being a business owner who is for everybody is an impossible task. So don't sign yourself up for it.
So we're going to get into the how to do this and some examples, but we needed to set that stage that it shouldn't be surprising to you that you're going to have to turn people away. My hope is you're listening to this and you have some examples of yourself and you know this, but unfortunately, I've just had too many conversations with too many entrepreneurs over the years that for some reason feel like their responsibility is to say yes to everything. So that's not where this is coming from. And if that's surprising to you, you absolutely need to keep listening.
Let's just say if you've ever been in a situation where looking back, you said, I should have just said no to that. And I knew I should have, but I didn't, but I should have 2020. You absolutely need to start turning more people away.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot be putting yourself in a position where you're looking back and wishing you turned people away.
We're only a couple weeks into the new year. It's not too late to start that for this year. Make that your goal for 2026 is establish this process for how to do it in a way that still, maintains a level of respect all across the board, but that works for you. And that's very crystal clear.
Qualifying customers is not new. This is not something we made up. This is something that many businesses practice every single day. I think when you're running a business though, you think the customer's job is to qualify you. And man, they're comparing me to a whole bunch of people. So I better be accommodating. I better make it easy to book with me, easy to buy my product. You need to flip that a little bit and be in the business of qualifying your customers too, so that you don't get in situations where you're looking back and you're like, man, I shouldn't have ever taken that on in the first place.
So we're going to lift the curtain a little bit behind our business, and we're going to share with you some of the things that we turn away all the time, like on a, not daily necessarily, but sometimes, certainly weekly basis, which is a great representation of the way that we're turning people away in a respectful way. But it's really important that we are able to turn people away because we cannot get caught and bogged down with all these back and forths or in-person meetings or all of these things for ultimately things that we know we're not going to take on. So it's really important to do this. We're going to give you a glimpse of the things that we turn away and why, and also how. The first is going to be really easy if they're just not able to hit our order minimum. We've said this a million times. You need to have an order minimum for what you do, especially if you're appointment only. As we are, as you know, it's not just the name of our podcast, it's the way we run our business, appointment only, which means you need to have an order minimum. But you shouldn't allow anyone to come in and buy anything, and that's not worth your while.
That's going to be probably one of the more difficult rules to set for yourself as a business owner who actually you don't answer to anybody but yourself. One of the hardest things to enforce over and over and over again is when there's somebody out there who wants to spend money with you, but they're not able to hit the order minimum that you have set for yourself. It's going to feel difficult to stand your ground and let somebody walk who isn't prepared to hit that order minimum, because they are prepared to buy something, right? And something's better than nothing, right? Wrong. You have to position yourself when you have an order minimum to stick to it and never back down.
We're going to read you an excerpt from a very recent email exchange we had with someone.
December 16th. And today is, I know you're listening to this a little bit later. Today's actually January, early. 2 weeks ago.
So this was an email exchange. Oh, I just pulled this off of my pants.
Uh-oh.
Pretty soon my pants are going to unravel. So you're going to want to tune into YouTube for this one. But this is an email exchange that we had very, very recently of someone who wanted to come in, and from initial reach out, we didn't really have a good sense of what he wanted. So we needed to get a little clarity to make sure we're qualifying him, to make sure he's in line with what our business services, and to make sure that he's prepared for our process and also prepared for our expectations. Take it away.
Hello, I'm interested in scheduling a custom fitting. I'm primarily interested in dress shirts for work. Please let me know how you recommend I proceed. Thank you. Hello, thanks so much for reaching out. We can see you on this day for this specific package. Please note you are welcome to purchase more than this, but we are unable to accommodate shirt orders for fewer than fill in the blank. Please confirm if this works, and we'll be in touch with specifics and timing.
So right there, he mentioned he wanted primarily shirts, but he said, maybe I'll do more. So we responded and we said, okay, if you want to do shirts, this here is the minimum order you can do. And we can do more, but we cannot do less.
Hello, unfortunately, I will be out of town on vacation and will return on this day. Was hoping for a weekend availability as I live in fill in the blank of a city, a couple hours from here. Thanks so much for your help. Hello, noted. For weekend fittings, we have a purchase requirement of at least this. So if you're looking to do shirts primarily, you can add this and fall within the requirements for getting into the fitting calendar on the weekend. If you are not interested in adding fill in the blank, then we'll have to insist the fitting take place during a weekday. Just want to be transparent about these order requirements so you know what to expect. Assuming that works, we will be in touch with you to schedule the appointment for a weekend or weekday in 2026.
So again, now all of a sudden he's getting even more choosy. Not only does he only want to do shirts, but now it has to happen on what are always our days off. We have an order minimum for our weekends. It's not that I have to have my full weekend all the time. If someone's going to make it worth my while, I will gladly sacrifice part of my Saturday. But this guy is now saying, okay, not only am I going to just do shirts, which is, just to be quite frank between us here, a shirts order is a far, far below average sale for us. So that's already not something that I'm excited to take on. We're willing to do it, but it's not something we're excited about. But now all of a sudden, it's got to happen on the weekend. So now we're needing to come back to him and say, okay, all right. So if you have to do a weekend, now all of a sudden, we're not talking about shirts. We're talking about a larger order minimum.
So this is from him now. Hello, I just want to clarify, you're expecting a sales commitment prior to me actually meeting anyone associated with the store or even seeing the clothing. So I would simply be paying to have the honor of driving 2.5 hours to get to your store. Do I understand that correctly? So he's now feeling very defensive.
He was obviously not planning to follow through
because he's planning on driving the equivalent of 5 hours to and from to, I don't know if he wants to look around or peruse or buy less than the stated order minimum for shirts, but he's frustrated because we are unwilling to not value the time that we spend with him. He wants us to treat the time that we're going to commit to spending with him as invaluable as he, for some reason, sees his time. In his mind, it is worth a 5-hour drive to go somewhere and peruse.
I can't even imagine.
In my mind, that is not worth, certainly it's not worth my time, but it's also not worth his. If you're going to make the drive, let's actually do some things.
We're taking his time more seriously than he is.
But he's frustrated because we are unwilling to allow him to not follow the process.
And again, this is what we were saying at the beginning. We cannot control how he receives this. All we can control is the way we communicate. And if you'll listen to the way we communicated, it was very, very cordial. We were even saying like, this is simply to give you an understanding of what to expect so we're on the same page. It's not like we're saying, twisting the knife here. We're just trying to give him a great sense of what we do so he's prepared to either say yes or no. It's almost like he doesn't expect himself to have an option. We're giving him an out. We want him to say no if it doesn't work for him, but he wants to make this happen, but he's also not willing to do what it's going to take to make it happen. So now he's mad at us that we're making it difficult on him.
And what this is communicating to us, his response is communicating he's not interested in getting custom clothes made from King Brothers.
No.
He just wants to go shopping.
He just needs a few new shirts for work.
And he doesn't have any options around him.
He just needs to go to the mall.
And
really
maybe he did do some research and would like to get them from us. But I did some research on vehicles and I would love to drive a G-Wagon. But that doesn't mean that that's something that I'm going to be doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
Nor is it something that the dealership owes me, to go over there and drive a whole bunch of G-Wagons just because I happen to not see my time as valuable. So that was his response. So then we responded with, hello, we're custom only and appointment only, and therefore do require a purchase commitment in order to schedule. Completely understand if you do not wish to proceed, which is why we are upfront about the expectations. Thanks so much. Happy holidays.
So we're very upfront. We're just trying to get to the bottom here of what's going on. When he responded rudely to us, we had to have a conversation like, do we even continue with this? He's obviously not going to do it. And we're just wasting people's time at this point, ourselves included, himself included, by responding because he's not going to do this. But we decided it was important enough to respond because I don't want to give him any ammo for him to say, yeah, and then they after they were mean to me, they ghosted me. Like it's obviously not true. And there's a biblical example called pearls before swine. It's like a parable. And there are certain things that we get into and we're like, this is pearls before swine, basically a waste.
Yeah.
What are we doing wasting this? What's a pig supposed to do with pearls? Nothing. This is pearls before swine. But we felt like, we have to just at least respond to this guy.
Yeah. And be nice. So after that, thanks so much and happy holidays. His email back is hard pass. Get over yourself.
Womp womp. So that's how it's going to be sometimes. When you take yourself seriously and you have really good reasons to have processes and minimums, sometimes people are going to be okay with it and sometimes they're not. And of the people who are not, sometimes they're going to be understanding and sometimes they're going to be assholes.
And I'm not saying that his time is not valuable.
What I am saying, what you are saying, is he doesn't believe his time is valuable.
But we've said so many times, nobody is going to value your time if you don't. And that's simply what we were getting at here is in this whole back and forth, we're just trying to make sure that this time that we set aside is going to be used really well and is going to get him closer to what his goals are for his closet because he's the one who's making this huge drive.
And whether or not he realizes it, it's not, sir, it is not worth your time to drive for 5 hours to sit down with me. I mean, the amount of time he would spend doing this would be up close to 7 hours because we would have scheduled an appointment for generic custom clothing for 90 minutes. So he would have driven 5 hours round trip and then spent, 90 minutes in an appointment. So we'd be looking at like 6.5 to 7 hours to what? Have a conversation about what? a few shirts.
Two whites and a blue.
Are you crazy? Like, I'm sorry that I don't think that's worth my time. It's not because I think my time is so valuable. It's because that is a waste of everyone's time, including yours. And I'm sorry that you don't feel like your time is worth more than that, but I'm telling you it is.
So not everybody is going to receive communication in the way that the communication was intended. And there's nothing you can do about that.
Right. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't stick to your guns. I mean, here we were in a situation that we knew was a lose-lose from the very beginning when he mentioned that all he wanted to do was shirts. We were assuming that this probably, because generally speaking, if someone reaches out and we say, well, here's actually the requirement for just shirts, usually they're not ready. So typically track record would be that lead is not going to end up in the calendar. So we're in this back and forth with someone from the very beginning who we know this is probably going to be a no. And boy, were we right.
And it's frustrating to be in that situation and receive a couple of rude emails from somebody, but it's not as frustrating as being in that meeting and identifying when you are face to face what his intentions actually are. And that's essentially what we are getting ahead of in the way that we're setting expectations and the way that we're communicating. It's like, if we can shut this down before this meeting happens, perfect. Because the last thing any of us want, him included, is to be in the room together when we are discovering, oh, you just drove to waste everybody's time. That would not end well. That would end a lot worse than a hard pass, get over yourself email response.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a not hitting an order minimum requirement thing and client and person, prospect, that is just an easy no. And there are guardrails that we have set up to make sure that we're only working with people who are committed to us and committed to at least our order minimum. But there's a much longer list of things that are just always easy no's. And I would say if you're running your business and you can't easily rattle off the 3, 4, 5 types of things that you say no to every single time, then that's something that you should set as one of your goals to work through this year in 2026, is to clearly identify things that you just don't take on anymore.
So along those same lines, the order minimum thing, that's something that I think should be set in stone. And if it ever changes, it should get stricter. That is not something that should be ebbing and flowing depending on how busy or slow you are. And it's going to feel worse turning people away that aren't going to hit your order minimum when you're really slow. But it's really, really important that you enforce that. Just for your own sanity, for your own sake. Once you've established something's not worth your time, it doesn't matter what time of year it is. If it's not, it's either worth your time or it's not. So when you're setting your order minimum, make it realistic, something that you actually truly believe is worth your time, which means anything up until that point isn't worth your time. And then my challenge to you would be, you are never in a position again to ever take anything on for less than that. Now, other things, other processes, policies can ebb and flow. We have, for example, one of ours is a rush order minimum because our straight up land in the calendar, as we sort of alluded to in the email, our land in the calendar order minimum is a lot different than our weekend order minimum, which is also different than our rush order minimum. The weekend and rush order minimum, though, depending on time of year, depending on what else we have going on, whether that be personally, whether that be actually like in the queue at work, those things ebb and flow. The numbers of pieces that we require of people, depending on how busy we are, that flexes a little bit, but it never goes beneath what our actual order minimum is. So hopefully that makes sense. Just to be specific about what we do, as you know, we sell custom suits. So the order minimum for a rush order, sometimes it's 2 suits, sometimes it's 4, depending on how many rush orders we have in the calendar. For a weekend, generally speaking, it's going to be 3 or 4 suits. And depending on the time of year, depending on how busy we are, depending on what else we have going on, we've even said 5 before, and they turned it down. But we've held firm on 4, and that is something that people do.
I think we said 5 because it would have required me driving back like 3.5 hours being on a family trip or something. but I was
Right.
willing to do it. I do that for 5 suits.
Right. And by the way, these numbers, 4 or 5 suits, these are normal things that we do during the week.
Right.
People come in and buy 4 suits, 5 suits on a Tuesday. It's not like we've never had
It's not like we're trying
sale.
it's not like we're trying to hit a record
These are not going to be record.
every time we have a rush order.
Yeah, these are not going to be record sales for our business, but we're valuing our time and our energy in a different way in different times. And if we know somebody, Joe Schmo, can wander in and we can get Joe to buy 4 or 5 suits on a Monday afternoon, then in order to compromise a Saturday or to prioritize Joe's order above anyone else's, then they're going to need to rise to the level of something that is substantial and significant.
Too tight a turn is something that we talked about. Rush order, that always has a minimum if we can hit it. If it's not possible, that's just an easy no. It's an easy no. And I know many people, this is one of those things where many people in our industry, they water themselves down and they start working with a whole bunch of vendors who can just crank shit out.
Mm-hmm.
And they can just turn and burn, and they can do things in 2-3 days. We have never done that because we have quality standards that we hold to. And that does mean that there are times where it doesn't matter what your budget is. There's just nothing we can do.
We got a lead once from someone on some random evening. And in our lead form, we have a couple of key pieces of information that everyone needs to fill out. It's required. One of them is items needed. One of them is deadline. And oftentimes they don't have a deadline and they'll list that. This guy's lead was, he needed a suit, I think, but his deadline was 2 days, like 48 hours from then. And he said in the notes, I don't care what it costs. My budget is $100,000. And instead of us falling all over ourselves to try to find someone who could crank something poorly made out in 24 hours, we just had to turn it down. It didn't align with our business. It doesn't align with our process. We have no process for that. And it just unfortunately isn't what we do.
I'm very curious if we actually could have done that.
He wouldn't have.
I don't think he would have done it. But it's a principle thing at that point.
My experience with people who throw numbers out is that they exaggerate.
Yes.
Anytime someone's volunteering financial information, whether it's how much they make or how much they spent on something or how much their vacation costs, if they're just volunteering that information, they're exaggerating.
You have to ask, why are you volunteering financial information? Another just easy no, an easy turn away is when it is obvious that somebody is trying to control how we are going to take them through a process. They're not being respectful of how we do things. They require that we work with them in this specific way. And this happens more often than you might think. You might be listening to this podcast and think, we're established, we don't run into this issue. People see us as the experts, and that's just the way it is.
I wish that were true.
It's not. It never ceases to amaze me the types of people who will try to control how we work with them. And that's just an easy, we are not a good fit. There are going to be people that you can find who will follow your lead, but in order to work with us, you've got to follow ours. That's the way that you experience what we do in the best way, but that's always an easy no. So that's kind of like our quick list is, if it won't hit our order minimum, it's a no. If it's not going to hit our rush order minimum or our weekend order minimum, it's a no. If it's just too tight of a turn, too close of a deadline, it has to be a no. And if you're not going to follow my process, and I know that, it's just going to be a no. Those are those times that you look back and you say, I never should have taken that on. It's those process ones. It's not necessarily, and in fact, rarely does it ever connect to a dollar amount. It's most often somebody who you took on and you worked with them and you were getting weird vibes, and you were saying yes to things that you typically don't even get asked about. You were making promises that other clients don't make you promise things for, and they did not allow you to just do your thing. Those are the clients you look back on and say, I wish I never would have taken this on in the first place. And you don't have to. That's the great thing about running your own business, is you can identify those keywords in the scheduling or those types of behaviors in the appointment, and you can decide, I'm not going to take this on. I don't want this to be one of those stories that I tell of when I looked back and said, well, hindsight's 2020, I guess.
We've talked a lot about this within our custom clothier coaching stuff, because one of the things that we, as you know, we just talked about some of the things that we turn away, which means we don't take free consultations. We don't sit down with you and go through a whole process and like spitball a bunch of things and basically bid jobs. A lot of custom clothiers, dare I say most custom clothiers, would do that. They don't want to, but they haven't figured out a good way to just start saying no. I always say, you just say no. It's very easy.
Yeah, start with one time.
It's very easy to just say no. Here's how you do it. No.
It's kind of like when you stop drinking. Just turn it down once. That's how you start.
You just got.
No, I don't drink anymore. Say it one time.
Yeah, you just have to start at some point.
And then every other time,
You can't keep making excuses.
you also say that you don't drink.
But one of the questions we get a lot from clothiers when we're talking about that we don't take consultations is, well, how? And then it's very simple. You just start saying no. But what I tell them is you can actually almost always identify, almost always, not always, but almost always identify if someone wants a consultation. And it isn't necessarily because the person comes to you and says, I want a consultation. They just generally will use non-committal language like stop in, swing by, check things out, see what you have. They're using non-committal language, whether intentional or not. My experience is sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. But you can figure out, the longer you do whatever you're doing, the more you can be in tune to people's behaviors, the psychology behind the way people say things, phrase things, word things, and you can identify things. You can read between the lines. When you're doing this long enough, you can figure it out.
It's a really freeing place as a business owner to identify that businesses have a very specific clientele that are right just for them. Your business, there are people out there who you are perfect for. And then your competitors, they have groups of people who they are just perfect for. And that place down the street, they have a group of people who want to use them, and it's a perfect fit. No business, like we said right at the top of this episode, no business is going to be perfect for everybody. And that is true, and it's really freeing. And as the business owner, one of the things that is our job is to get to the bottom of, is this one of my people? Or am I accidentally in contact with somebody else's person? And one of the things that we do these days is when we identify this person isn't right for us, we will sometimes send them to a quote unquote competitor of ours who we feel like they would be a better fit for, or what the questions they're asking are actually much more in line with how that person runs their business. There's nothing wrong with that. And they'll be happy to hear that news, happy to get the referral. But it's one of those things that when you're running a business, I understand the temptation is you want everybody, but you don't want everybody. What you really want is you wish everybody was right for your business. And that's just not realistic, because most people aren't right for your business when you start to take it seriously, when you start to prioritize its health, when you start to prioritize your own sanity, your own peace of mind, your own profit. When you start to take certain things seriously, then you have to identify that your pool of people is getting smaller, but it's not disappearing. It's just a matter of finding the people who are a perfect fit for you, and understanding that sometimes you're going to be in touch with people, or you're going to be working somebody that's not your person, and that's fine too. But that's why we've set sort of these rules for ourselves, and these order minimums, and these requirements, and these, if we're working together on a Saturday, it's going to be for at least this dollar amount, is because that's our way of helping us identify, are we working with one of our clients, one of our target people, or not? And there's nothing you can do about it if this is not somebody who's right for your business. It just is what it is. Nothing wrong with that person.
But it's your responsibility as the business owner to have that conversation.
Right.
And to be able to steer them in the direction that you need them to go. And they either are willing to go along, or they're not able to, or not willing to. Either way, though, the buck stops with you because you're the business owner.
Yeah, and the example of the email that we read where the guy was just super offended by us speaking very plainly, very straightforward, is I bet he'll accidentally get in somebody else's calendar. And that's their problem.
Mm-hmm.
And he's going to be a problem. I can already tell.
Yeah,
'Cause he's already worked up.
I know, and he speaks that way to someone who, quite frankly, it is what it is to say this. Like he needs us in our service a lot more than we need him, and that's not rude, right?
No, that's not rude.
It's true. He needs us, and he needs what we have a lot more than we need his business. But he's going to take this attitude with him, and he's going to project it. He projected onto us. He's going to project it onto someone else. And that person is unknowingly going to be in the situation where they're working with this guy who's mad at us, and he's taking it out on them. And they're going to be over here saying like, well, how did this happen? Well, it happened because you didn't have the right conversations up front. That's what we're trying to help you to avoid. That's how you turn someone away. That's why you turn someone away.
And turning somebody away it doesn't need to be as explicit as telling them, we're not a good fit, go somewhere else.
Right. There's a better way to do it.
Turning somebody away is simply having the right conversation so you can get to the bottom of, is this meeting going to get scheduled? Is this a client for me? Or is this person going to identify on their own that they're not wanting to come in and work with us? That's how it happens with us, is we set the expectations, we set the ground rules, and then they say, oh, never mind, I'm only looking for one suit, so I guess I'll go somewhere else. That's us turning them away. That's not them turning us away. That's us saying, oh, you want to come in on a Saturday? Okay, our Saturday appointments are reserved for people who need 3+ suits. If that's you, great, we'll get you in the calendar. Oh, I only want one, never mind. That is us turning them away, but they think it's their idea. And that's a great position to be in all around, where they feel good because they can go and work with somebody that's in better alignment with them and their needs. And we feel great because we didn't put somebody in the calendar and sell them something that frustrates us.
Yeah, best case scenario in that stage, we're disappointed, which is not good.
Right.
That's not why we're doing this. We run this business because we want to be able to run the business, not because we want it running us.
Yeah, I would say really the only time where it's our choice is when it's one of those timeline people.
Mm-hmm.
When they want something in 4 days or next week and we have to say, oh, sorry, that's too tight. Good luck. That would be an example of we are turning them away. But all of the other ones, it's not us saying, go somewhere else, you're not a fit for me. It's saying, here's what our expectations are. If that's in line with what you're thinking, then this seems like it's going to be a great fit. And then they decide, it's not in line.
We're always giving them the opportunity to rise to the
say
occasion.
yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's how we do it. And I would encourage you to take some of that and apply it to your business if you would find it helpful.
And I would encourage you yet again, if you can't quickly, effortlessly, mindlessly rattle off 3, 4, 5 scenarios that you turn away, then that is your homework. You've got to figure out those things that drain you, those things that don't pay well, those things that every time you're in one of those situations or those meetings or make one of those sales, you're frustrated by it. You need to identify those things, start to say no, so that next year at this time, it's effortlessly rattled off when we ask, what are those things that you'll just never do?
And alternatively, if you've been nodding your head this whole episode and you're very quickly able to identify specific things, that's me patting you on the back.
Hope that felt good. Mine was a little lower. I went a little closer to your lower back.
Honestly, my lower back
slap. That's me giving you spankings for doing a good job.
My lower back is killing me. We've been back in the gym.
We have been back in the gym.
I think that tells me that my form is excellent.
Yeah. When every exercise is a lower back exercise, you're doing it right.
When you injure your lower back, that means you're doing it right. All right. Thanks so much for coming to your appointment. This one's over. We'll see you for your next one.